I'm Boris the Bee Guy, and this is our forest beehive apiary in central Maine, on the shores of this secluded forest lake next to 3,000 acres of state-owned wildlife sanctuary. This land has no agrochemicals for miles, and the forests and meadows here provide our bees with sufficient natural foraging resources, allowing us to practice an old style of beekeeping that is minimally invasive, treatment-free, with zero supplemental sugar feedings. And now we'll talk about today's topic. Can real honey be produced in compliance with vegan ethical principles? Although a lot of fruits and vegetables are produced largely with the aid of the honeybees, the world's most versatile pollinators, in the vegan community, beekeeping is sometimes characterized as exploiting and enslaving the honeybees and killing the bees in the process of stealing their honey. So are beekeepers killing the bees? With conventional commercial-style beekeeping in vertical beehives, with their familiar multiple stacked-up boxes, it is indeed very difficult to avoid squishing and crushing many bees every time the heavy top supers are replaced. In contrast, beekeeping using horizontal hives have no heavy boxes to crush the bees with, as they only use light individual frames, each frame mimicking a single honeycomb from a feral beehive in a natural tree hollow. In our horizontal beehives, the tops of the frames touch, covering the honeycombs underneath. So even when the top lid of the beehive is open, like during inspections, the bees are much calmer than in conventional vertical hives because very little light or air gets through to disturb the bees. Calm, undisturbed bees do not get agitated and do not sting and die in the process. So are beekeepers stealing honey from the bees? It does indeed happen with conventional industrial-style beekeeping operations, when honey production quotas are the ultimate goal, that the bees are sugar-fed and most of their honey stores are taken and exchanged for sugar, a practice that ultimately harms the bees' health. Here's an NIH study showing that sugar feeding adversely affects the bees' health. In contrast, along with the thousands of other beekeeping enthusiasts who practice an old-style, minimally invasive, treatment-free, sugar-free beekeeping, at Forest Beehive Apiary, we never exchange any part of the bees' honey stores for sugar. For us, the ultimate goal is to keep the bee colonies healthy and in a clean habitat, instead of achieving record-breaking harvests from overworked, overstressed, sugar-fed bees. We harvest only in late fall, and only if the colony has way too much honey reserves. We will then take that surplus honey only. If too much honey is left over for the winter, it will actually diminish the bees' chances to survive our cold Maine winters. According to Dr. Leo Shoroshkin, a longtime natural beekeeper in Ozarks, Missouri, in climates with cold winters, leaving too much honey over winter is actually as dangerous for the bees as not leaving enough. With too much honey left, the bees will have to spend extra resources to keep that surplus honey warm. The honeycombs may cool and condensation may form on them, leading to moisture problems, mold growth, attracting moth parasites, forcing the bees to abscond. And with growing environmental threats to bees' habitats, absconded bees are having ever-diminishing chances of finding a new suitable home in a timely manner. In other words, in climates with cold winters, if the beekeeper does not remove surplus honey before winter, the bees will have worse survival chances. So if there's a honey surplus that should not be left over winter, we remove it and either harvest it or give it back to the bees in early spring, in case emergency feeding is required. For example, due to a long spell of bad weather when no foraging is possible. For emergency spring feeding, as the bees won't touch capped honey, we lightly break it up with a fork and spritz water on it to dilute it. Then the bees start treating such honey as nectar. So are beekeepers enslaving the bees? In conventional beekeeping, the methods for preventing the bees from swarming or absconding include clipping the queen's wings, jailing the queens behind queen excluders, removing the queen's cells, and frequent killing and replacing the queens. With natural, minimally invasive beekeeping at Forest Beehive Apiary, we do none of that, and our queens are naturally mated as opposed to artificially inseminated. As opposed to coastal Maine, with its much milder winters, for central Maine, I have no personal or anecdotal evidence of any beekeeper here encountering a truly feral honeybee survivor swarm. A swarm that settled in this smaller beehive was from our existing bee colonies, but within a week, these bees decided to leave. It's unfortunate, because the ecological threats to bees' habitats have intensified, and with the right beekeeping, the survival odds for managed honeybee colonies are much higher. Per Thomas Seeley, a world-renowned Cornell University professor, who spent decades studying honeybees in Arnott Forest in New York State, 75% of feral swarms in nature do not survive. This percentage of non-surviving feral swarms could be closer to 100% in central Maine with its colder winters. So beekeeping in central Maine is essential for honeybee survival here. And as far as honey is concerned, honey is mostly dehydrated nectar from flowers, and it may well be considered vegan, but only if it is produced without bringing any harm to those who created it. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.